welcome to the Africa Weekly Talk. Today's subject on the docket is the African debt crisis going on around all of the African continent and the role that is being played by donor countries as well as the world global NGOs. This brings to mind an interview that I watched last week on MSNBC Morning Joe with Joe Scarborough interviewing the founder of the Global Citizen Festival, Evan Hughes. Evan Hughes is a very good human being, very good person. The Global Citizen Festival has been going around for almost, I think, at least about 10 years now. And this year's festival is going to be held in New York as well as Ghana simultaneously. And in Ghana, I think it's going to be headlined by Usher, and then in New York by Metallica Band. So it's a big deal because basically what this thing does is it raises funds for countries, especially for third world countries and poor countries all over the world. And in the interview, Evan Hughes talked about this particular year's program is going to center on helping young girls all over the world, which is a very good idea. But in that interview also, Joe Scarborough, who is the host of the Morning Joe show, asked him why Ghana this time. And he said they're doing it in Ghana because of the economic situation going on in Ghana right now. And he related it to the debt crisis going on in Ghana, as well as the war in Ukraine and the pandemic, which have also made it more difficult for Ghana to service its debts. He reiterated about the Ghana's debt to its GDP, which I've already talked about before. I talked about this some a month ago. And in this case also, he also reiterated how much Ghana is spending out of its GDP to service debts. But there's one thing that I disagree with Evan Hughes on this issue, especially when he mentioned about the Ukraine as well as the pandemic, which is hurting a lot of countries around the world. Because that becomes like an excuse for some of these corrupt African governments or corrupt governments around the world to use, and that's what they have been using, the Ukraine war, Russia-Ukraine war, as well as the pandemic. But if you go down deep into these crises going on around the world, especially with African countries, this debt crisis goes beyond, way before the Ukraine-Russian crisis, as well as the pandemic. This thing has been brewing because of bad governance and the corrupt governments around the world by most of these third world countries. And that is what pretty much has contributed to the hardships that most of their citizens in these countries are going through today. Yes, the Ukraine-Russian war is playing a minute role, very minute role, as well as the pandemic. I mean, the pandemic affected every country in the world, okay? Every country in the world had to go through this pandemic issue. So every country was affected by the pandemic. Now, the reason why most of these African countries are having serious problems economically is because of bad governance and the corruptions that is in these countries. And the debts that have been taken on by these countries because of their corrupt mindsets have not put the money that they've been borrowing all over the world into the right sectors of the economy. That is why that most of these third world countries and African countries in particular are having hard times in this particular time of the year because of the pandemic as well as the Ukraine-Russian crisis. But the Ukraine-Russian crisis is very minute. Okay, it's a very minute. So I didn't really like the idea when people try to use Ukraine-Russia war as an excuse, as well as the pandemic, some sort of excuse to justify why some countries are going through these problems. It has contributed to some of the problems that most of these countries are going through. But if you look at the underlying factor of most of these countries in Africa and their problems today, it has to do more with the corrupt governments that are in place in Africa, as well as the crony capitalism system and the socialist communist mentality that most of these African leaders have implemented economically in their systems that have not helped the African people. But in the course of his interview, he also talked about helping poor young girls all over the world, which is a very good step and very good thing for him to do. I mean, the Global Citizen Festival has been a very good and great program for poor countries all over the world. It has helped a lot. But I would suggest that they have to change their pattern in terms of how they give the money that people contribute to this program to third world countries. Because third world countries, if you know about third world countries, I can say specifically, let's say Haiti, as an example. Haiti went through this about, was it 10 years ago? When they had the big earthquake. And a lot of the donor countries and individuals that contributed money to help build Haiti. Go and look at Haiti today. It seems like that money didn't get to Haiti. So basically what goes on is that when most of these donor countries and most of these NGOs, some of these NGOs, when they take this money, about 80% of this money will go to administrative costs. And some of it, 20% will go to the real problem of the situation the country is going through. There are some NGOs also who say that they have like 50-50 or 60-40, which makes more sense to me. But I think most of these world NGOs have to reconsider how these money are distributed or sent to these countries who are going through problems and all that stuff. Because I think the best thing for some of these NGOs to do is to send the money directly to the people directly, rather than sending it through their governments. Okay, rather than sending it through their government, because I bet you most Africans will tell you that any money that goes through their government does not go to the people directly, period, which is a fact. Because at the end of the day, the systems there are so corrupt that the government officials will have to keep some of the money for themselves and their cronies. So most of the money will not go to benefit the people who are really in need of the money to help build their lifestyle in these various countries. But the most important thing he said that I took note of in his interview was about the debt crisis, especially in Ghana, and where Ghana's economy is today. Just last week, the Bloomberg News had a report, as well as Goldman Sachs also had a report, where the Ghana Central Bank had an emergency meeting because of the free fall of the Ghana cedi. As a matter of fact, according to the Bloomberg News, the Ghana cedi fell 2.7% that day, which I think was on the 16th of August, which is last week. And then, up to date, from their report, the cedi has fallen about 34 to 37%. And right now, as I'm speaking, the cedi is the worst performing foreign currency, right behind Sri Lanka's rupees. Right behind Sri Lanka, bankrupt Sri Lanka's rupees. That is where the cedi is at right now. So basically, you have these two countries. You have Sri Lanka and the cedi, which is Ghana cedi, right behind it, as the two worst currencies in the world right now. I didn't say this. This is based on economists from Bloomberg News as well as Goldman Sachs. I did talk about this about a month or 2 months ago. I mentioned Sri Lanka in correlation with Ghana, the economic crisis that was going on in Sri Lanka, and how that is heading towards African countries, and specifically talking about Ghana, because at that time, the Ghana situation was getting worse and worse. And I was relating it to Sri Lanka because of what Sri Lanka has gone through. And if you look at the underlying factor of both Ghana and Sri Lanka, they are way in line together. Because one, it's a crony capitalist system. The political system there, both of them are very corrupt. The Ghana government is corrupt, as well as the Sri Lankan government. And most of the economies are run through crony capitalism. That is, basically goes through the political parties, the leaders of that country, runs this economic system through their cronies, their friends and family businesses. And you look at Sri Lanka, this is exactly what was going on in Sri Lanka. And in the end, this is where Sri Lanka is. The country is basically collapsed. And right now, based on the Bloomberg news, as well as the Goldman Sachs report, if you look at it, this is where Ghana is heading right now. So it's unfortunate. It's unfortunate. But Evan Hughes himself, the Global Citizen Festival CEO, mentioned that in his interview with the MSNBC's Joe Scarborough. He stated it. The reason why they are in Ghana because of the debt crisis situation in Ghana today. So the economy of Ghana is pretty much getting there. It's teetering towards collapse. That's where it is. I didn't say this. This is from Evan Hughes. This is the guy who is trying to help raise funds for all third world countries as well as Ghana to help them with the economic situation right now. And if he's the one saying this, that should let other African countries as well as the citizens of Ghana to know what is really going on in their countries. It is getting bad. It is getting bad. Okay? I hope it doesn't get worse than it is right now. But that is where it's heading towards right now. And the most of these problems that most of these African countries are going through can be attributed to one thing: corruption. Corruption. That is why most of these countries are going through these problems. Yes, we have the Ukrainian-Russian war. Yes, we had a pandemic. But if you look at the underlying factors of most of these third world countries and African countries going through this debt crisis right now, corruption is the key problem to most of their problems today. So I get it with the world economic situation, with Russia and Ukraine, all that stuff. But let's not pretend that if these things were not happening today, all these African countries going through these problems will be all right. No, because the systems there are corrupt. And that is why they are in dire situation right now. It is the level of corruption in these countries that is what has caused their citizens this kind of hardships. But kudos to the Global Citizens Festival for taking note of this and trying to help Ghana and other third world countries and poor countries around the world with this Global Citizen Festival. It's going to be held next month, September 24th, simultaneously, one in New York and one in Accra, Ghana. Kudos to them. Now, let me move on to what the key issues that I want to talk about today with regards to this situation. Ghana had gone to borrow, sold Euro bonds about 2019, and then just last year also sold some more bonds. Took all this money, but still they couldn't service their debt, and still they couldn't pump this money into the economy of Ghana. Like I stated earlier, the level of corruption in that country should not be excused for what is going on in terms of the economic situation right now because of the level of corruption. And also, you look at the countries like, the country next door to Ghana, Cote d'Ivoire. Cote d'Ivoire was in civil war. This country was in a civil war about maybe 5 or 6, 7 years ago. Just came out of civil war. But even though Cote d'Ivoire had been in a civil war, if you look at the way the economy is trending, I'm not saying it's trending better, But this is a country just came out of civil war. But at least it is trending in a very positive way. Compared to a country like Ghana that hasn't been in any civil war for the past 30, 40, or 50 years. Or, I mean, ever since Ghana became independent, or even prior to being independent. So if you look at this economic situation that is going on in that country, there's no way you can take out that level of corruption as the main driver of the problems that the country is going through today. But one thing that other African countries have to learn from Ghana is this, and other countries, not just Ghana, but Ghana and Sri Lanka and all these countries. I mean, because it's going to happen, it's coming. I mean, Kenya is going to go through that situation too. Hopefully, they don't go through it. But I mean, you have all those countries that also have higher debt servicing. Okay, and South Africa is one of them as well. Egypt is one of them as well. I mean, Nigeria has its own problems as well. So if you look at overall picture, if you look at the overall picture of the continent of Africa, like the World Bank report that came out about 3 months ago, it said 25 sub-Saharan African countries, 25 countries in Africa are in a situation that can lead to where Sri Lanka is today. Okay, so if you look at all these problems that is happening, like I stated earlier, the underlying factor to these problems are corruption. It's the level of corruption and the kind of economic systems that most of these countries have. Most of these countries are implementing socialist, communist form of economic policies. Okay, because I was just watching an interview that was done also with regards to a situation going on in Sierra Leone, where people are protesting on the streets because of the difficulties they are going through. And there were even people suggesting that the government should have some sort of price controls. Okay, price controls don't work, my brothers and sisters. Price controls don't work. So that is the last thing you want a government to get involved in terms of the local market system, economic system. You don't involve government in the market system. That is a bad policy if any African country dares try to use price controls, because price controls is not going to solve the problem. Most of your problems is the level of corruption in your countries. That is where the problems are, because the corrupt systems that have been put in place by your governments is what is causing all these hardships. So to my fellow Africans, it's sad and it's unfortunate. Okay, it's sad and unfortunate. Now it's become the quintessential African way that somehow every time you hear donor countries calling for world economic meetings or everything, it has to be about Africa and other third world countries and how to find solutions to their problems and all that stuff. And at the end of the day, you look at it, for the past, let's say 50 years, we've been having these donor conferences and all that stuff, and we are still in the same boat. So there's something wrong. There's something wrong when you keep going back year after year after year after year, and you are still in the same damn boat. There's something wrong with our systems. And that is what we have to look at. I'm going to talk about that another time, especially the political systems, But because let me go back to talk about Ghana. If you look at Ghana, for instance, I know Ghana has gone to the IMF 22 times out of the past 33, 32 years. 22 times they've gone to the IMF. I mean, if you keep going back to IMF for the past 30 years, 32 years, you've been to the IMF 22 times. Then there's a problem. There's a problem. What is the problem? That is what we have to sit down and start rethink the way we do things in Africa, where we set our priorities, and how we can curb corruption, because that is the key driver to most of our African problems. Most of African problems is corruption. If you're able to drive down the level of corruption in our countries, then hopefully, it can help rebuild our economies. Because as far as you have these chronic capitalist systems in place, it's not going to solve our problems. So I'm not going to go further and talk too much about this issue, but I will come back next week and detail some of the political problems and how to help educate most Africans on the solutions to our economic and political problems right now. But let me also say this to the people of Kenya. Congratulations for choosing a new president. It was a peaceful election, as far as I know. What do you call his name? Raila Odinga, even though he's decided to use the court, which is the right thing to do, he called for his protesters to go home. People shouldn't fight on the street. People shouldn't do anything, which is the right way to do. And hopefully, by the time everything is settled through the courts, the new president, William Ruto, will come in and then also implement policies that will be anti-corruption policies to take that level of corruption also in Kenya away. So I'm going to also use this opportunity to thank you guys for supporting this channel. You've been around ever since I started this channel. I appreciate every one of you guys. This channel was established mainly to have a platform to share ideas among Africans or anybody who wants to contribute to the development of Africa. We share ideas, and then we also call out the shortfalls of Africa. So we are not just going to be making and doing this program just based on saying good things about Africa. No, we're going to say good things about Africa when it's necessary, but we're also going to call out the bad things that is also affecting Africa's development. So if you hear me criticize Africa, or criticize your country, or criticize some policies going on, I just want to hear your feedback. So if you have any suggestions, just go to the comment box and then type your suggestions in there. But if it is Sunday, it is the Africa Weekly Talk, and thank you guys for supporting this channel. I also had a situation where some friends have been saying about my unique t-shirt. Yes, I have a couple of them that I want to send out. I'm going to send out to some people. I'm going to do through the lottery system. I'm going to do my own lottery system, and I already sent a couple to some friends of mine, but I'm going to do it through the lottery system. And I have it unique uniform, and you can see in front of it, it says what? I don't look for trouble. It finds me. So peace to fellow Africans. God bless you guys. And hopefully you guys have a good week, and we'll meet again next weekend. Take care and God bless you.